Hello friends, and welcome back to Social Impact Live, the daily video show where I give you frameworks and experiences from my own life about creating social enterprises and creating social change in the world. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about how I stay positive while building a social enterprise, because it's something that's been on my mind, something that I've been actively doing lately as I think about the numerous forces in the world, the things in the world that want to pull me into sort of seeing the world in a negative light. As I think a lot about what it means to create social change, ultimately for me, that comes from a place of hope. This belief that the world that we live in right now could better serve the needs of others, those in particular who it isn't serving super well right now, that the people who comprise that world, can tap into that divine light within them as well, that wants to give hope and love to other people. And that we can ultimately position our social institutions, our offerings, our work, our lives in a way that is more in the light overall. That's where it comes from, this belief that we can be beings of light. But as we do this work, as I do this work, right, there are these other things that come in that make it so that it's easier to see the world in a negative light. It's easier to see it as a place where bad things happen, and they always happen, and they always will happen. Bad things can't be changed. People don't really want to affect change within the system because they come back down to their base desires instead, their own selfishness, their own desire for self over others, even when others are hurting. These are like sort of cynical frames that can creep in very easily to make it possible to see the world in a negative way. And so I want to break this concept of how I stay positive while building a social enterprise into two parts. The first part is what we're talking about today, which is the social change aspect, the need to feel to return to a place of positivity while moving through the world and doing social change. And then the other part, the second part, is more focused on staying positive within the business realm of building an enterprise also. So I'll talk about that tomorrow. So when it comes to the first part, specifically around how to stay positive personally within this is a challenge. I think I'm just going to tell you a little bit about sort of myself and where I'm at with this. As a child, I gained some experiences that started to pull back the curtain on the social institutions we have, on the fairy tale ending that we say is supposed to exist. I recognize everyone at some point experiences death. Everyone at some point begins to see that life isn't all positives. It doesn't always feel positive, at least. And so I started to see that as a kid. But overall, right, my perspective through most of my life, and the one that I actually try to center on even during these times, is that there are so many people in the world, and the vast majority of them are trying to do good. They're trying to be good, they're trying to do good, they're trying to live their lives well, they're trying to be kind to someone out there. And that's a reality of humanity, right? When you meet people, even though you might not agree on everything, and usually you won't agree on everything, and if you do agree with someone else on everything, then I wonder what ideology you're following. You meet people, you realize that even with all the shades of gray and the difference in all those elements, there are these things within each of us that we actually do agree with, that we do see the light in, right? And that's something that I try to hold on to. But it seems like the more over time I've learned about the history of the world, I've learned about what happened at a given time, I've learned the details of the history that I think was hidden from me in a lot of ways, the more I've had to contend with this feeling like there's like an insidious plot, that undergirds a lot of what we do, because the reality has been hidden. So much of the truth of why the world is the way that it is right now, how it's still operating in those ways, and what's keeping it from changing has been hidden from us, such that you have to go seek it out. And then the people who seek it out and then who talk about it end up being labeled as the negative people, or the race baiting people, or whatever term people really want to apply to it. But I also think it has the effect of doing something to those people, which is something that I've felt it do to me, or try to do to me at times, which is it makes you more cynical. It makes you more cynical about the world. You question the motives and the intentions of others, especially because this history has been hidden. And so we're not at a place where we're having a conversation about things that have been brought to the light of day. We're at a place where, when it comes to the history of housing segregation in America, and why there's a housing gap in home ownership and wealth accumulated within houses between Black and white Americans. When it comes to that issue, to get very specific, it doesn't feel like we're having a conversation saying, let's address this in a way that lifts all boats and helps all people. What we're really having is a conversation where some people are seeing the history fully, and they're saying, wait, these are major problems, and here are the things that are perpetrating it, and in fact, you might be supporting a system that maintains this gap and this lack of opportunity for some people without even knowing it. And then the people who hear that say, wow, you're being really offensive to me right now, because they don't have the information. Okay? So how do you stay positive within all that? Well, first of all, I think the biggest thing for me is that I come back to thinking about my place in existence. I was created by God, and I have so much power within my body. I was gifted this power. We were all gifted a power. We were all gifted the ability to create change, to make something in this world. God is a creator, and we are creators as well. This is what I believe. And so when I think about my place in the world, I realize that while I am a person endowed with incredible power, I also only have so much power personally on my own side to create change around me. I, as a person, only have 24 hours in a day. I only have so much energy that I can muster to keep myself awake. I only have so much energy that I can use to move my body through time and space. And that limitation means that when I look at every challenge that exists, I can't actually expect to affect all of them. So the first thing is to recognize that I am powerful yet limited, and I have to pick and choose some of the things that I really want to affect. So that's one thing that keeps me on the path toward positivity, is knowing that I only have so much influence, so I don't have to take on the weight of the entire world at the same time. The second thing that keeps me positive is actually, I guess, the first thing, which is that I was created, and this world was created, and that there's purpose and there's meaning within all that. So I actually don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to move every system forward. I don't have to be the one who creates all the change. I don't have to stop every bad thing that happens, because there are things that I interpret as being bad, things that I interpret as being good that are vice versa, that are the opposite potentially. And so it's not my job to necessarily be the diviner of all those truths. Instead, there's an element of trust that I need to have in creation, in the God of the universe, that there are things outside of my control, but that are supposed to be outside of my control. So that one and the previous thing sort of go hand in hand. Those are two major things. The third is the knowledge that man doesn't know. A lot of what can make me feel negative is not necessarily learning about history. It's the spin or the way that history is retold by others who've learned those truths as well. To be honest, a lot of what brings me down are others who have learned about America's past, but who hold it in such a negative light that it's devoid of hope. And so when they say it, when they talk about it to me, it tries to pull me into that vortex of hopelessness or of sadness. This is true both about history. This is true about the things that are happening every single day on the news. So a very specific example is, when an individual, when a black person in America is shot and killed by police, there is a group, or groups that I'm a part of, and we collectively recognize that this is a pattern and a system that produces that outcome over and over again. We recognize that it's something that needs to change. We recognize that it's unjust. But the way that that is talked about at any given moment has the ability to impact my emotions. I recognize that truth, and I mourn the deaths and the loss of people. I think about deeply what that means about the families and the mothers who've lost their kids, about the cycle we're in, about the fact that the next person, the next black person, isn't going to be stopped by our current actions, isn't going to be stopped by our current system from being killed. I think about all those things so deeply. But I always end up in my own mind trying to move to a place of hope, a place where I say, there's a way that things can change. And I look at that same history of the world and I say, because I've seen that they've changed before, right? I've seen that the United States of America abolished slavery at one point, and it wasn't easy to make happen, and it wasn't without backlash, and it wasn't a lot of things, but it did happen, right? There's been a progress, there's been a progression in our world, and while that does nothing for the feeling I have about that specific person, right? The person who's been killed, the person who looks like me, who looks like my son, these things that are truly emotional. To sit in the space of negativity about what that means for the future for too long, to me is something that pulls me down into negativity. And so I try to ballast the negative interpretation that is unanimous, but also enduring for a really long time, with something that is a bit more hopeful at times, which is trying to reflect on where did change happen, and what can be done. I often think when it comes to things that upset us in the world, the best way to begin to alleviate that feeling of being upset is to begin doing something that actually makes progress toward a different outcome. I cannot bring back the people who've been killed. I cannot bring back the people that I've lost in my own life who have died. But what I can do is work to improve the future so that it doesn't happen again. So that the person who dies, that their legacy, that their memory, that their life still went on to impact change around the thing that ultimately unjustly took theirs. Right? And that is the frame I have to get into as quickly as I can, because otherwise the emotion of social change is just, it's too great. So I take this raw emotion, I sit with it, I hold it, and then I need to transform it into something that is productive, transform it into something that is powerful, and begin to move forward from there, recognizing that I am limited in my overall ability personally to create change around that, but I can do something, right? I can rally others to the cause too. I can begin to push for things. I can identify what needs to be changed in the first place. I can work on it. I can try, right? And within that, I have hope that change can happen because I've seen that change has happened before, and I know and I believe that human beings were created in the image of God, and that we have this divine spark within us, which gives me hope that I can connect positively with other people who are trying to create this change as well as those who are opposed to the change. It gives me hope that there's something, even when we are at odds with one another, that there's something within us that resonates still with one another. All of that put together is in many ways the formula for how I stay positive. When my older brother passed away, this was the feeling this was the thing that I learned, was how to transmogrify, how to transmute that pain and that hardship into something that I could hold on to, but could make me stronger. Also, where I could carry that forward as something that would mean something for me in the future, that could be positive in the world, and where it could become the seeds of so much positive good as well. And so that's sort of, it's a big part of it. The last piece I'll say is that I think human beings are made of more than our impact. I think we're made of more than the change that we create in the world. I think we're made of more than the consequential outcomes of our actions. There's a philosophy, it's called consequentialism. And it basically says that good and bad are measured by the outcomes that are achieved. It's something that is common in our world. We think about it all the time. Was that good or was it not good? Well, we'll see what happened in the end. Rather than what was the intention behind the actual action itself. And then let's couple that with some of the outcomes also. Let's couple that with the effort that was put in. But we're in a world where the consequence of what happens is how we measure what's good and what's not. And in some senses, we can start to measure human beings, people, other social entrepreneurs and innovators that same way. We can look at them and we can say, you are as valuable as what you contribute directly to the world. It's a dangerous way of thinking if we only think that way. What it says is that the person who can't contribute as much to the world is less valuable. What it says is that it ultimately comes down to the sum of your accumulated resources or expression of those resources into the world that signifies how valuable you are. Or even that every individual has their own sort of standard for how much they could do, and we're measuring against that. If that is all that we're doing to measure what is good and who is good, then I think we have a problem. And I know that that's not true. I don't buy into consequentialism as the main philosophy of my life. The other side of it is that there is goodness in the world in and of itself. There is beauty in creation. The trees themselves, the birds themselves, the ground itself, the dirt. My son is reminding me of this as he grows older. He's 1 year old right now, and is teaching me that there's so much beauty all around us also. And so this other side to life is recognizing that within that limitedness that we have, it is how are we going to invest, but also how are we going to just enjoy and praise the beauty of creation itself. And so for me, the other piece of how I stay positive is saying, I know I only have so much time and energy to be able to affect change. I also only have so much time and energy to spend with my kid and my family, to build a life for myself, where when I stop thinking about the challenges of the world, which have always been there in some shape or form, that I have something to rest on that feels good also. How do I create balance in my life such that I can stay positive with workouts, with time spent with family, with investments in my own surroundings and my environment? Those questions, are the other piece of it. And I have had to reject a philosophy that says that, making sure that your own environment is one that you can be comfortable in, that you can enjoy. I've had to reject a philosophy that says that that's a bad thing, because I think there are philosophies that will push you in the direction of saying, if you haven't, given away almost all of your shelter and given away your vehicle so that you're walking down the street in old shoes, then you haven't done enough. And I don't think that's a recipe for longevity. I've seen people who held onto that philosophy when they were young completely turn their backs on social impact, completely go and work for the corporate organization or machine because it was too much of a sacrifice to make forever, in a world where they have other things that they want also, because we are made of more than that. We are made of more than that as well. And so that's what I got for you. Those are the different things that I do to stay positive while building a social enterprise when it comes to engaging with the social change aspect. Recognizing that I'm part of creation and that I don't have to have all the solutions, recognizing that I have limited power in and of itself, recognizing that whenever things are negative and challenging, that I can do something though, and that making that progress towards somethingness is actually part of what heals me from that, gives me hope in the future, recognizing that things have changed in the past and can still change in the future, and that my actions can contribute toward that, and recognizing that I'm not the sum, though, of all the social impact work I do. I'm also a human being with other skills and desires and interests, and that those things are also part of my creation, and that they matter, they should be honored, and that if I spend some time on those and spend some time on these, if I cultivate my garden on both sides, I can create positive change in the world, but also live a truly positive life. All right, that's what I got for you. That's on this episode of Social Impact Live. I'll be back tomorrow with the second part of this, which is how to stay positive while building a social enterprise from the business side of things. See you then.